Hello guys and welcome to Cat's Video Production Live, and here we have a special guest to discuss about what's going on in Republican wars. But before, I just want to say, everyone, you can comment and using our chat, of course. We have a moderator, Mihalich, Simon Parnes and Alois Bergert, and have a thank you to them for our chat working. Thank you so much for this. And also, you can donate to us over PayPal, over Zelle. The links on the screen right now, and it's also you can find the information in our describe on our under our about our this translation. Thank you so much, guys, for that. And so here's in our Two Cats Video Studio. I want to invite Vito LaBella. Thank you for coming to us, and Lester Chang. Thank you, guys. And you hear us good? Everything is great. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with Vito. Vito, tell us about a little bit about yourself, the boss, the Vito LaBella, and Lester Chan. They're all the candidate for the New York Assembly. But Vito, let us know why you're going to the as a candidate running for the New York Assembly. What do you want to change? No sound. We cannot hear you. Yeah. Okay, Lester. Maybe you started.
Certainly. Do you hear my sound? Do you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Name is Lester Chang. I'm District 49. That's basically Sunset Park, Dikers Heights, Bensonhurst. That's the area where I hope to represent. I'm a retired military, 24 years in the Navy, and also Afghanistan about 12 years ago, and just recently retired a few months ago. Why would a retired military for over 2 decades of service running for candidate? It's very simple. I see New York right now is good. Economics been stalled, crime rate is up. What can politician? Basically, non-politician is very in the city.
How you decided to run as a Republican, as I know you're a Republican candidate in a Democratic state, because it's very just a little chance to win because the system how to count the votes it's so corrupted, and also the power of the Democrats who just create that situation when Republicans look like a crazy people around. Why you decided to go? Yes, just please explain that.
Certainly. I know I'm running an uphill battle. It's not an uphill. It's a Democrats been throwing boulders at me, not rocks, boulders at me. I'm against years. His name is known. He has about close to 2 million in his donation. I don't even have nearly that much. Probably less than 10. And 6-to-1 ratio, 6 Democrats to 1 Republican. And about 57% are Chinese, and most of them are registered. A lot of them are registered, but compared to the Irish or the Jewish people. And that's pretty much, it's more than an uphill battle. I'm climbing a vertical cliff. I didn't decide this thing very lightly. And one big factor I have to thank with is Kurt when he ran for mayor. Because in this area that I represent, 60%, actually close to 2-to-1 voted for him. That Eric had the confidence that I may have not a 50-50 chance, maybe to possibly to win this, because it tells me the very basic thing is I ask the question is, are you doing better than 2 years ago? If you're not, change. If you are doing better now, you don't need me. Vote the same. If you're not doing better now, change because the person being in office. So that's is my hope. It's a very simple message. Don't need to press people door to door. Are you better doing now or 2 years ago? That's a simple message. Give
Yeah.
the people a pause.
We try to connect Vito also to our conversation. Vito, is everything is great? Yeah, it looks like we can hear you. Try to say something. Yeah.
Vito, can you hear?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, finally.
There we go.
But this is live, guys, and so we just do honestly. Okay, Vito, tell us the situation when the governor candidate, but it's not like a real governor of New York, Katie Hochul. Tell us if you're a Republican, if you are a Trump supporter, if you are supporter of Zeldin, go away from the New York State, go to Florida. You are not the value of the New Yorkers. You are not New Yorkers. I was shocked when I heard that. What is your comment on this?
So listen, I mean, we support Lee Zeldin and the conservative Republicans all the way down the line. We have to. It's not just about one state Senate race or assembly race. This has got to be an overall change to try to restore the balance in New York State, to try to chip away at the supermajority that's up there. And the fact that Kathy Hochul has such hubris that she thinks she can tell New Yorkers that they don't have a right to be here because we might disagree with the policies that she's putting forward. I mean, that's just the height of pride, and it really speaks for itself.
So, but what my concern is the situation that even in New York City is so worst when you are Republican, because we just spoke to the Lester. The people know if you're Republican, something wrong with your brain. So the Democrats and radical left try to create that situation, try to explain everyone what the only radical left can help and protect our democracy, but there is not democracy anymore. As long as I see the situation, what Joe Biden do, as long as I see the normal American have to have second work to just to support family, that's not like a first situation. This is not like American have to believe. How can we change that? I know you go into the as a candidate for the New York Assembly as well. Tell us a little bit more about how can you change that situation, how the people who watch us can change the situation.
So Nick, I'm running for a Senate in the 17th district in Brooklyn. Okay. And all of us, it's over the last 8 years that these progressive Democrats have chipped away at one thing or another to get us in this situation. So there's very little we can do overnight. It's not like flipping a switch. The first thing we need to do is we need to get balance up in Albany. Right now, there's a supermajority of senators up there. I believe we have 63 total. We have 63 total senators in New York State, 43 of which are Democrats, and only 20 of which are Republicans. So we need to get rid of the supermajority. We need to chip away at that. We need to increase our numbers so that we can put forth amendments to some of the crazy legislation that the individuals who you're talking about have put forward over the last 4 years. And it really started in 2018 when there was this blue wave that overtook Albany that really, I mean, all of the crazy legislation started then. And when we lost the Senate, when the Republicans lost the Senate in 2018, the Republicans were just holding back the dam. We were just holding back all of this crazy legislation. And as soon as the Republicans lost power, they pushed it all through. So we just need to get back into some kind of balance so that they will listen to reason and they will listen to moderate, common sense opinions about bills and legislation that we could put forward. Okay, so now I lost you.
I lost the audio as
Oh,
well.
so I said, I said we have a question from Peter. Question for Vito. I saw your palm card and read that belong to school organization. How will you fight the Democrats regarding the drop in student registration and smaller classroom sizes?
Well, I mean, hopefully Kathy vetoes this class size matter bill. It's a very flawed bill. May well be good intentioned. It may not be. But this class size bill, and I just posted a video on this, will be less funding per school. What it will do is, especially in District 20, we have schools that are at capacity or at over capacity, and if we reduce class sizes, well, we don't have any classrooms to create to put all of these kids into another classroom. So we can't really build up. We can't build out. It's New York City. We really don't want trailers around the school. And if we have fewer students or the same amount of students, and we have to create all of these resources to teach the same amount of students, the dollar amount that the school is going to get is not going to go up. So we say we get 25, 30 grand per student. I mean, now we don't have the money for this class size matter bills. And if we did, we would have to cut other programs that parents want. Programs like art and music, and programs like accelerated learning programs, like AP programs. So the class size matter bill is very, very flawed. We should do something. If we want to mandate something, and this is all, and we can get into the weeds like crazy with this, but if you want to mandate something, we should mandate a seamless day, 8:30 in the morning to 5:30 in the afternoon for every kid who wants it, a seat in a summer rising program for every kid who wants it, and a seat in an accelerated program for every kid who scores a 4 or better on their state ELA and math exams. This is ways we could spend the money in ways that can actually improve performance among the kids that right now are lagging behind and has the most horrible stats, like 40 to 60% of Black and brown children can't read at grade level. That's unconscionable. And we need to find programs specifically that work to help these kids. And we also need to follow up and find best practices and hold people accountable when programs don't work, and so we could try something different.
Try to ask Lester. Lester, I know if you're talking about schools, so many the radical left and the Democrats already there. They are just in the schools and kindergarten. They wishbrow the child, try to make them more radical left, more Democrats, and something like that. But what the Republican do in this case? Republican not presented. It looks like on a university, in the schools, in the kindergarten, they not do some, politician lessons for them. What's the situation with that case? Do we need to present it in a school like a Democrats and radical left, or do we need to stay away from our childrens and let them know when they're growing a little by little what the political view they have to be attended?
A very heart of the matter for the Asian parents here as well, because this is one of our core value that the Democrats, the liberal Democrats, Chinese core value, education. That was really striking powerful for you when they're trying to, de Blasio, trying to disband is the SHSAT, trying to make it equal because the Black and browns are not doing well. The Asian kids are doing very well. We invest the kids for tutoring and for extra services so the kids can get to well and do well. So they're trying to eliminate the test. So it really got the Asian, and with the current administration, the mayor administration, what they did is all these higher end high school, right, as it's now based on lottery. So that even went for Asian parents even more mattered more now, as that's why we have a chance as Republicans, because parents who really realize they made a mistake. The Democrats, liberal Democrats, trying to, I understand for Black and brown access, but schooling cannot be equalized. Hypocrisy based on how well you do your scores. You just can't, just like in the military, nobody Navy SEAL. You have to do well. You have to do physical fitness. You have to do score. Be the best to be in the best. Same thing with school. You can't really equalize that. But we prepare from pre-K from and up is for black and brown. We can prepare them, but it takes time. It doesn't take overnight to equalize what the current administration. It takes time. It takes long investment. And one thing you can't legislate, the will you want to go to those classes. No matter how you feed these kids, if the kids don't have the desire or the will or the parents and the family to support that, hard time to survive well in those specialized schools. It has to be, it's everything. Parents, it's the child. All three elements must have the desire to do well. But the way it is right now, how the liberal Democrats with their policies, crazy, and cutting away from quotas for the Asian kids, it community. And that's one thing I hope that myself and Vito and his just the common sense of education. Common sense is the education is of our community.
How can we talk about common sense when we have already in a school critical race theory and so many parents they're not just agree with that, but for the Department of Justice, for example, in Mary Garland, he said, "Oh no, this parent is domestic terrorist," and he go with war against these parents. What is your comment in this case?
That this is absurd. The critical race theory, and we should revert back to the parents how they want the school standards. So that's why we need to change it to Republican. So that's the only way to correct it. As Vito said, it's a long process. We need to have that balance in power. Now, one thing we have not mentioned about is the schools, parochial, and yeshivas, the Jewish people who attend mandate their standards, and I am against that because except for public school, the parents should set the standard of what the school should be. But the state is trying to take over. No, and the parochial and private school, this should be the state standard, and I disagree with it. So that population, the Christians, the Catholic schools, the behind our parties right now, even though they may be Democrats, but we'll have to see about reflective in November. Any comment about that, Vito?
Well, so look, I mean, we as a party, I think in my platform, we want to do away with the charter school cap. What Lester was saying is that, parents sometimes don't know what they have to do, so we have to show them. And what Success Academy does is take the same kids from the same community, oftentimes in the same buildings or very near, and they take kids who are in this school, and they don't just train the children, they train the parents. And we know that starting in 5th grade, what Success Academy does is explain to the parents what they have to do. They have to read to their children every day. They have to do a report every day. And Success Academy just so outperforms community schools in the same location. We should be taking a lesson from that. The Department of Education get a clipboard and see what works, and they should take that and run with it. Now we have 3K, we have pre-K. Success Academy school starts at kindergarten. We should have 3K programs and pre-K programs in the most underserved schools in this city. So wherever the test scores are the lowest, that should have the most 3K centers, the most pre-K centers. And we expand out from there until every single 3-year-old and 4-year-old has a seat in a program.
Okay, so far we got question to Lester, and this is to change the topic about the homeless. Lester, what is your stage on the homeless in the area you're running from? I see many homeless around Sunset Park. How can the city help them? And we can change the situation, because not only in New York State, but in California, there is a lot of homeless people, and the raise the criminals, and the people afraid to go outside, even with the children. And okay, what's the situation in the Sunset Park?
Well, not in Sunset Park, as all of us New Yorkers see, there's a huge influx of homelessness, and not just only if they're transplanted from someplace else because they know they get the benefits. Now, you galvanize a lot of neighborhoods. The current administration and past the Blasio is community shelters, and no communities that I know of want a homeless shelter. Certain elements, drug dealings, and all that, and that's not good. So we're politicians. Oh, let's do something better, but they don't have a formula. I have a solution. The solution is repurpose Rikers Island, create a homeless transition center, full quarters, food, treatment, both mental health, and then pay them for training, paid stipend, so they can stay there long enough to get some sort of cure or ready to become the mainstream, getting paid so they can put down payment for proper homes. That we can create a homeless community in Rikers Island. No one's going to complain about that. I love the idea because it's away from the neighborhood. So you can see a lot of homeless people that could be alone, mental health problems itself. So Rikers Island, you do it in a proper setting. It could be a convalescent island. It's very idyllic, as it was a private island. It's free. It's not a jail. So as long as they're receiving payment, these homeless people will want to get cured, want to get treatment, and they're receiving payment on that. You don't have to worry about being safety or treatment because you're in a closed environment, in a secure environment. So that's my home proposal. Now, I don't know anything that the last administration, de Blasio, might be selling Rikers Island. Until I don't have any information. I hope it's not. If it's not, then we should develop Rikers Island for homeless community center, plus modernize the jail. That's away from these community shelters. Nobody wants it. I don't. So let's create a community in the island that it's only one way in, one way out with a bridge. Other than that, it's secure.
Okay, I wanted to switch for Vito. Vito, you are a former police officer, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about the police reform, about what are you thinking about defund the police? What are you thinking about what radical left doing in the democratic states? Chicago, 400% increase of the criminal cases for the last Labor Day. For this Labor Day, they were killed 55 people. And that situation pretty much in New York City. In New York City, I believe it's about 55% increase of the criminal cases. And Los Angeles, in my opinion, radical left want to be chaos everywhere. And they say to us, we need to change political system, we need to change Senate, Supreme Court, and all system around, because this is the cause. What do you think about that? What the people are afraid go out, and so the democratic states just told us, oh, this is the gun problem. If you have a legally gun, this is the problem. So let's take away our guns and everything, and let's do criminals do whatever they want to do with us.
Nick, you just said everything, right? I don't have to say anything. You did it for me. So I joined the police department in 1986. The 80s, the 70s, and the 80s were a very bad time for New York City. 1977 is usually seen as the nadir of New York City. We had the blackout. We had the riots in the streets. That was the Ford to City drop dead. That was the lowest point of New York City. Crime out of control. Buildings burning all over the city. And when I came out in the 80s, in 1986, It wasn't great. It was still, they just started doing some things, but it was only until 1989, 1990, when we started enforcing we started to institute the broken windows theory of policing. We started to address quality of life violations, first in the subways for a couple of years, and then when Mayor Giuliani got elected for his first term, we started to increase that up in the street as well. And so we know what we have to do. By enforcing these small crimes and small offenses and targeting recidivist criminals, people who have a prior history of violence, people who have a prior history of robbery or assault or stealing or are multiple offenders, have 99, 100 arrests. Those are the individuals that we have to target. And we have to make sure that when they get arrested, they go to jail and they stay in jail. And, that's the basis. We know what we have to do because we did it. Crime was way, way up in 1990, and it went way down in it went way down up until probably 2012, 2015. And then de Blasio's last term, he really went crazy. It went super crazy when the Senate took over, when the Democrats took over the Senate in 2018. And, we got to just slowly build back up. We got to make sure that the police know that we support them. We got to give them back qualified immunity. We have to have a police officer's bill of rights so they know that when they do take action and they're acting in good faith and something bad happens, they're not going to lose their job or goes to jail. I mean, we could talk about this, for the next 2 hours, but basically those are the first things that we have to do.
Okay, I want to ask you about falsification of the election, because this is the main topic. We also 2000 Moles movie. It was released before. Now it's a new coming up about my son Hunter, about the Biden family. So how do you really want to win, not changing the system of control of the election? Because nobody give any guarantees this election is gonna be honest, this election is gonna be without falsification. And like a Virginia, Republicans stay on every exit poll and they control everything, and they say just don't even think about falsificate this election. How change the situation? What do you do in this election to control who gonna count the votes, and especially the situation with the absentee ballots and mail ballots?
Well, so thankfully, the people of New York State, in the last election, we voted no on the referendums that would have made no excuse absentee balloting a permanent feature. And there are other election issues there that were voted down. And I'm very grateful that the people of the state of New York saw this naked power grab that the Democrats were trying to push forward. We have to have teams in place at every polling site, and when they're counting the ballots, to just make sure that everything matches up. There are a lot of flaws in the voting rolls. Lester and I, we went petitioning. We know some of it is the fault of the laws that need to be updated. You have people that are 100 years old, 110 years old. They're on the voting. They're on the voting rolls, but they've been dead for years, or they moved away years ago, and no one can clean out those rolls without some kind of crazy onerous requirements that nobody is going to do. I mean, I tell people, my dad was a city worker. When he died, guess what? His pension stopped like within a couple of days. They knew he died and they stopped his pension. Yet someone is dead and they're on the voting.
But he still can go and vote for Joe Biden. So even if you go to the nursing home, people are really sick that don't even understand what's going on. How they can vote for the for some the president or someone else? They even don't know what's going on around.
So I do have concerns that people in nursing homes will be unduly influenced by the workers in those homes. Unfortunately, how do you oversee that? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But it's certainly something that is maybe anecdotal, but it's certainly something that needs to be looked at. That's a bigger question than I have the answer for. I got to tell you.
Why politicians not raise up this question? Because we got some certain people who cannot go and vote until 18 years old, but there is no requirements the people who is really old. And so, do we need to change that situation? Do we
Well,
need to change the no why?
No.
no, listen. We can't take away anybody's right to vote, right? We say that people have to reach 18 because that's when they can really balance the pros and the cons of each candidate and make an informed decision. I think it's a very slippery slope when we say to some people, "Well, you're too old to vote. You're too this." You know, that just does not work in this country. Everyone should vote, but everyone should it should be their vote. It should be their choice. And I would love to have more checks and balances in place. That's something that I think that as a society would be better off. But I think I think places that started this election integrity issues, I think they have the right idea. We have 10 days of early voting. Why do we need absentee ballots for everybody? If we have 10 days, very few people vote. We can maybe have buses where we pick people up and bring them to the early voting site rather than have them fill out an absentee ballot all the time. It's something that we have to agree on in the legislature, and I don't know if it's going to happen.
Okay,
Let me add.
Yeah, Lester,
Is
go
it,
ahead.
I've been election day court for over 30 years. So I'm very familiar with the process itself. It's the system have not linked up the voters IRS or the immigration department INS. If they were linked up, they would have cleaned that up in order to do that. Okay, so once you do that, then there were a lot of people, all the dead people, and there is no real process in the organized process at all. Because obviously poll workers, when they see, oh, this looks like similar, but maybe one letter off, but it's two names in there and the same person. How there is no real organized way unless we raise the issue back to the applicant name on that. So there's a certain percentage need to be taken care of. Now that requires to formalize that instead of just by policy. It has to be by legislation. How to get, and next is an absentee ballot. During the pandemic, it was a free fall of no reason to get absentee ballot. Right now, they tighten that up, and they should even be tightened up and list certain reasons why you should get absentee ballot. And Vito is right. We had voting, and there should be some exceptions. So we could put that down in legislation that qualify for absentee ballot instead of just broad range, so we can help Board of Elections better define who entitled to absentee ballot. Military service, obviously, is another example, or overseas another example, or nursing homes another example. So we have to do that legislatively. That's one thing I would like to suggest. And also, I would like to is a picture of the candidates on the ballot. It's remember names, but they remember faces. So we got the technology, and we got to put candidates' pictures next to the ballot. So this will have especially able to read the names, but to recognize the person's face and make the proper selection. Especially people can make mistakes, and when they submit the absentee ballot, if they make on that ballot, that whole ballot could be invalid by itself. Marks or marking two candidates with supposed.
Lester? Okay, so this is the live, and sometimes we have an interruption. But Vito, let us know how can we help, how our viewers can help. Is there any chance to register as a volunteer for your campaign? Let us know. So, what kind of help do you need?
Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, we need all the help we can get. We are running an underdog campaign. We're fighting an opponent who's getting money from the Democrat machine, lots of money from the Democrat machine, lots of money from Democrat politicians. They're funneling it to her. And that's the way they do it, right? They try to overwhelm the system with all of these ads. So any help you can give us, please. Vito LaBella for New York, VitoLabelllaForNY.com. And there's information on there, how to donate, how to volunteer. We need all the help we can get, and we really appreciate it.
So, Lester, tell us how we can help to your campaign. Is again, maybe some people can volunteer to your campaign. Maybe how to donate and how to find more information. Some websites can you provide us?
Certainly, website is very simple. It's NY Lester for NY. You can go to that website and you volunteer, and also as well as donation itself. But donation is one thing. Power out in the streets and asking the people the questions. It's much better now than 2 years ago or 4 years ago. Are you doing well? You're not doing well. Consider the change. That's the most important thing. Unfortunately, my community, my high level of registration, but they do not come out and vote. I've been doing this business for Chinatown for over 30 years, and the returns are not as good. The only way community to come out and vote, something has to be wrong, something has to be bad, and I don't want that, because that means somebody has to get hurt, killed, or died. Just my community, it should be organic. So perhaps maybe we should introduce off the incentive for people to come in and vote, or some sort of credit if they do public service. But the message has to be liberalizing a primary. Instead of closed primary, maybe make it open and have the people come out to vote even more and participate. So that's one of those few ideas. But other communities are doing very well. And one thing is, unfortunately for the Democrats, they have very strong labor unions that supporting and they have a strong link with that. They have huge manpower because they're financially linked. Organizations are linked to the Democrats, the politicians, because they get specific. So they're sometimes afraid of supporting Republicans because financially we're not as strong as Democrats in those programs. So they're kind of reluctant as well. And I've been told it's not some of the Asian nonprofit community organizations require their employees to be a Democrat. Now, I have third-hand information. It's possible, and it sounds like that's how these nonprofits get their fundings. And you have Democrats been in office for so long, they can favor certain nonprofit, and so that's how they own power. So that's what I've been told. Third hand, I can't prove it, but it sounds like that. Vito, do you hear anything about that on your side?
Well, there's all sorts of rumors out there, right? So, I mean, the question is, this all comes down to the same thing. We have a super majority of Democrats that are able, without checks and balances, to do whatever they want, and there's no power for the people to say, hey, wait, that's not right, that's not fair. We need balance, like everything else in life, right, is balance, and we need balance in government as well.
Check and balances, yeah, that we don't have it anymore. We have a radical left politician like Katie Hochul, who just decided for us where have we live. So if we're not fit for the New York, go away. So let's fight for that, because this is only we have to fight to make a decision to make our country back better, and also for us, for our children, for our family. First of all, I wish you good luck, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Once again, Vito LaBella, Lester Chang. Please vote for these guys, because it's really good guys, and they can change the situation. I believe them. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for the hospitality. Hope to
Thank
see
you for
you
having
again.
us. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
$25. Second, to improve the experience of people, their families and caregivers living with and surviving cancer. During his speech at the JFK Library in Boston on September 12th, President Biden will lay out that vision and provide an update on steps the Biden-Harris administration is taking to achieve this generation's moonshot. not only to end cancer as we know it, but to change people's lives, improving their health, and decreasing the burden of the disease. And finally, this week we know a lot of kids are going back to school, and we know that's the case in Uvalde, Texas. Our message to the Uvalde community is the same as it was the day of the shooting and when the president visited the community. The whole nation is with you and always. This is a painful and challenging time for the Uvalde community. The president is thinking of the students, parents, teachers, and community members this week, and our message to the nation is we will not rest until we can make schools safe again, or safe places. Okay, with that, Sungmin.
Thank you. Can you talk about how involved President Biden and the White House is in trying to ensure that the same-sex marriage bill passes in the Senate this month? Do you believe that it can pass and get 60 votes in the coming weeks?
Well, as you know, we, with the I know there's a legislative pathway that's being discussed currently in Congress, so we'll let leadership decide how to move forward with that. But the president is a proud champion of the right for people to marry whom they choose, who they love, and he believes it is non-negotiable, and the Senate should act swiftly to get this to the president's desk. When the bill passed Congress in the House recently, he put out a SAP, as you all know, supporting that piece of legislation, so it has his full support. And I just want to add, the president was one of the first leaders after the Dobbs decision leaked to sound the alarm about the imminent threats to the imminent threat this meant to the right to marry, something he has continuously reminded the country of since. So he's going to, his team is going to continue to be closely connected and have continued conversations with staff and members in Congress to make sure that we get this done. But again, this is something that he supports, this piece of legislation, and this is an issue when it comes to marriage equality that he has supported through his Senate days and as VP and now as president.
And one more policy question. Russia confirmed earlier today that President Putin will meet with President Xi next week in Uzbekistan. And obviously that's one of President Xi's first trips out of China since the pandemic began. And I'm wondering if the White House sees it as a concerning signal at all that for his first major foreign trip, President Xi is choosing to meet with President Putin, and what kind of message that sends to this White House?
So, you know, and we have said this before, I'm not going to speak to reported meetings between other countries. That's not something we're going to do here. It's not something we're going to do from the White House. But we've made clear our concerns about the depth of China's alignment and ties with Russia, even as Russia prosecutes a war of aggression on Ukraine, an unprovoked war, as we have said, a brutal war. But again, I'm just not going to respond or make comments on a meeting that other countries are having with each other.
Great.
Thanks, Corinne. I'm going to follow up, I guess, on both of Sungmin's questions. The first was on marriage equality. Yeah. You said you'd leave it up to leadership. Is there a reason that you wouldn't want it as part of the continuing resolution?
Again, when it comes to the mechanism, and we've said this before, it's nothing new when we're asked about a process of a piece of legislation. When it comes to that process, that mechanism, the path forward, we leave that to the leadership.
On President Putin, he also spoke today and said that he threatened to cut off all energy exports to the West if the U.S. proceeded with its gas.
This
cap.
is the gas price.
And so I'm wondering, are you concerned about that threat? Do you think it's a legitimate threat? If so, does it change your strategy at all going forward on this?
So I think, and you've heard us say this before as well, is that you know, this shows that Putin is, again, weaponizing energy by his very words, also by his actions. But the president and our partners in Europe predicted this playbook. We saw this coming, and we have been preparing for months. And we have talked through the different processes of how this price cap could look. So another thing that we have done is we've set up a task force. You've heard us talk about this with the EU back in March to work on ways to increase alternate sources of natural gas to Europe and help reduce Europe's demand for Russian energy through increased efficiency and clean energy deployment. And so that is something that we're going to continue to do to be helpful to Europe as they head into the winter months. But this process of the task force already has had a positive effect, as we've seen. Europe gas shortage will be full by the critical winter heating season. Germany will reach their target gas storage despite the Russian cuts ahead of schedule, and Europe as a whole will reach a significant higher level than last year. So again, we prepared for this. We knew this was going to be part of the playbook in Russia weaponizing energy as they have been for the past several months, and so we will be prepared for this move.
A last quick one. I know I saw the readout between the President and the Prime Minister's phone call last night. It made mention of the fact that they discussed the Northern Ireland protocols, and I'm wondering if you can say specifically if the President discouraged her from abandoning elements of that, or give any more color to that conversation and sort of the tone and tenor of their talks.
So I don't really have too much more to add from the readout. Look, the President expressed it is a priority protecting the gains of the Belfast and the Good Friday Agreement, and preserving peace, stability, and prosperity for the people of Northern Ireland. Don't have much more to add from that. Okay. I'm going to try and call the folks out. Go ahead.
Thanks. Can you just follow up on Justin's first question? And I understand that storage supply is certainly up right now, but if weather goes in a bad or unpredictable direction, things could get significantly worse for Europe in terms of pricing for the people. How concerned is the White House right now about political instability? We saw it in Prague, the president's Prague, and what it might mean for the coalition going forward?
Do you mean in general, the coalition as it relates
as in
to
kind of the Western alliance
with
as it pertains
NATO,
to Ukraine, and whether or not
okay.
political instability driven by energy cost increases could be very problematic?
So look, you have seen the alliance and the strength of the alliance these past several months, and a lot of that is because of the leadership of this president. We are going to continue to work on that partnership. We're going to continue to work with our allies. As we have seen, NATO is going to expand by 2, and that's because of what this president has been able to do. This is one of the things that Russia, that Putin, that the Kremlin thought it was going to do is divide the West, make NATO weaker, and it did the complete opposite. And that is what we have seen for the past several months. And as you know, the president was in Europe recently, just before the summer, and you saw the strength of that alliance. You saw the strength of that partnership, and we believe you're going to continue to see that, and we're going to continue to be in coordination. I mean, I think the price cap, when the G7 finance ministries met last week, you saw them come together and put forth different pathways to the price cap. And so that is one way you see that alliance continuing as well. So we know that there's a lot more work to do, and we'll keep looking for ways as gas increases and in Europe, and to help bolster other sources of energy as well. We'll work towards that where possible.
But there's no near-term concern that there are fractures in terms of
no,
there's a very united group.
We are still very united. We're continuing to show that unity. Again, we have to remember, Putin thought when he started this war, this brutal war, this unprovoked war, as I've said earlier before, as we have said many times from this podium, that he was going to divide the West, that he was going to make NATO weaker, and the opposite happened. It is stronger than it's ever been before, and we believe that will continue and continue to grow that relationship.
Question on the line.
Following up up on the question about the call with the new Prime Minister yesterday, did a trade deal between the U.S. and the UK come up? Was that discussed?
The US-UK trade deal. So there is no formal linkage on trade talks between the US and the UK and the Northern Ireland Protocol, as we have said, but efforts to undo the Northern Ireland Protocol would not create a conducive environment, and so that's basically where we are with the dialogue.
Trade at all yesterday?
I don't have much more than what was in the readout, but that's where we've been with that.
And will President Biden meet with Prime Minister Truss when he's at the General Assembly?
We don't have a meeting or anything like that to read out at this time.
Corinne, the Washington Post, as you've likely seen, reported that some of the files seized at Mar-a-Lago include material on foreign nations' nuclear capabilities.
Bless you.
Sweet gracious.
Take that outside, Ed.
One more time. We'll
Do you need a tissue?
No.
Okay.
We'll start. I'll keep my mask on. Quickly, the Washington Post reports that files seized at Mar-a-Lago include material on foreign nations' nuclear capabilities. I know you can't speak specific to that investigation, nor to the findings there. I know where the line is drawn at this White House as it relates to that. But what has this president specifically said, and has he held any calls with some of America's allies or even adversaries on the issue of nuclear secrets that the U.S. may have some access to try to placate their concerns that that information is not in safe hands in the United States?
So I can say this, we don't have any calls to foreign governments to read out at this time on this particular issue. As you know, and I'll reiterate this, you already kind of alluded, you know, when it comes to this specific issue, as I've said many times, the ODNI is in the middle of assessment and DOJ is in the middle of an ongoing criminal investigation, so I'm not going to comment, but again, I don't have any calls to read out to
Let me ask separate from that then. Obviously, this is not unique to this investigation. There's been discussion that classified information was mishandled by the last administration, even before this investigation that we've been reporting on. So at any point has the president had conversations with other nations to communicate to them that that information, they should view that information as secure? What has he done to try to make that message clear to those allies or adversaries around the world?
Again, we don't have any calls
Has he in the past?
We don't have any calls to any foreign government to read out to you at this time.
From any time over the course of 18 months?
We don't have any calls to read out at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go jump around. Go ahead.
I want to ask about a decision today by a judge in Texas who said the Affordable Care Act's requirement that insurance plans cover HIV prevention drugs violates the religious freedom of a company. Wanted to see if you can comment on that decision, and related to that, can you give us an update on your efforts to update last administration's rule allowing employers with religious objections and moral concerns to not include birth control in their plans that they offer?
So as for that decision, I'll refer you to the Department of Justice on that particular decision. We will have a statement from here. I just don't have anything to share at this time.
Any update on the rewriting the rule from the last administration on covering
with that as well, I will refer you to the Department of Justice. I don't have anything to share at this time.
So yeah, thanks, Corinne. So a federal judge talked about the social media lawsuits from Missouri and Louisiana. A federal judge ordered that you have 20 days to turn over emails communicating with social media companies over misinformation and disinformation. What are those emails going to show? What kind of communication?
So I can't comment. You asked me this question last week. I can't comment on any specifically ongoing litigation. And so again, we would refer you to Department of Justice. A couple of things that I would say just as a general matter on this. As we've said over and over again since the beginning of the administration in our battle against COVID-19, it has been critical for the American people to have access to factual, accurate, science-based information, and ensuring that any media platforms have access to latest information on a once-in-a-generation pandemic is something that has been done since the earliest days of the pandemic, beginning under the former president. So this has happened under the former president. I cannot say more from here. It is an ongoing litigation, as you know, and so I would refer you to the department.
What about if those communications are still happening? Are there frequent contacts between the administration and social media companies?
So I'll say this, you know, as we have said before, there has been ongoing work dating to the Trump administration to provide accurate COVID information where folks get their news. Again, this is litigation that is ongoing and is currently happening. Clearly, that's why it's ongoing, and so I would refer you to the Department of Justice on that.
Corinne, thank you. President Biden has said that not every Republican is a MAGA Republican. Would he consider Mitch McConnell a MAGA Republican?
I'm not going to go into specific name or people from here. What I will say is, you know, when you go back to the speech, his speech last Thursday, you know, people have talked about if it was divisive. It wasn't divisive. The way that we saw this speech is that he was talking to majority of the country who agree that we have to protect our democracy, who agree that we have to protect our freedom, who agree that we have to protect our rights. And the point of the speech was that he wanted to really point to an inflection point, an inflection time that we're in at this time in our country. And he spoke very clearly. He talked about a minority, a small group of people who have extreme views and who threaten that very, very core value of who we are as a country. And you know, he also asked for people to come together. It didn't matter if you were a Republican or independent or a Democrat. He asked for folks to come together and stand against what we were seeing, these attacks. And you don't have to look further than January 6th of 2021 to see what the attack was on our democracy. It was very clear. We all saw it. Many of you reported it that day. And when you have people who say the protesters on that day were patriots, that's problematic. That's coming from leaders. And from that extreme part of the party. And so that's what he was talking about. He also ended the speech in a very optimistic way in trying to bring people together. And so I'll just leave it there at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Corinne. I have a couple of questions on China, but first a little bit more detail on the filtration cap. I'm just wondering, why is it just now that you are speaking about this from the podium, and why is it just now that the U.S. is bringing this up at the UN Security Council? This is something that a lot of activist groups have written about in past weeks. I believe Secretary Antony Blinken has also spoken about it since July. So I'm just wondering about the timing of it.
So as you know, this is information that was downgraded information, and so as you know from past times, it takes some time to do that, you know, don't have much more to say. It takes time to do that. I'm not going to go into our process. I'm not going to go into how our intelligence community moves in that process, but again, we're providing it now. And we wanted to make it very clear on how we feel about this, how we're holding Russia accountable for the atrocities that they are committed, and we're going to continue to do so.
And a couple of questions on China. Can we get the administration's response to Beijing's accusation that NSA hacked a Chinese military university research?
Say that again.
So there is an accusation from Beijing that the NSA hacked a Chinese university research facilities. Is there any response from the administration?
So I would refer you to NSA on these claims from China, but generally speaking, it would not be surprising to me that, or to us, that China is deflecting from its own malicious cyber activities, on which there is extensive reporting from the private sector and governments around the world. But again, this is something that I refer to you to NSA on.
Thank you. One more on China, please. Is the administration still considering stopping Nicaraguan imports? There's some reporting, including from our side, on that, particularly in light of the country potentially taking steps to sign a free trade agreement with China.
Say that. I didn't hear the beginning.
So is the administration still considering stopping imports from Nicaragua? There's some reporting on this that we've also done in recent weeks, particularly in light of the potential free trade agreement between Nicaragua and China.
And the free trade agreement. Okay. So look, we are going to, as we've mentioned before, when it comes to this, there's been a dramatic deterioration as you know, of respect, of democratic principles, and we've talked about this before, and human rights by the Ortega Murillo regime in Nicaragua. I think we had this conversation last week in the briefing room, including the harassment and imprisonment of democratic leaders, members of the political opposition, students, faith leaders, and journalists. In addition to the regime's increased relations with Russia poses risk to the security of the hemisphere. With members of the international community, we have already taken a number of actions to promote accountability for the Ortega Murillo regime's actions, and will continue to do so. But at this time, we don't have new actions to announce.
You're not confirming that you're stopping imports?
Just don't have any new actions to announce.
Thank you.
But we've talked about this many times. I know you've asked this question. I'm going to go around. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Karine. Two questions. One about the Brazilian election that's coming up in 25 days. Senator Bernie Sanders, Tim Kaine, and other Democrats are about to introduce a resolution to support, to show support for a free and fair election in Brazil, and to call on the U.S. to break ties with Brazil if the result is not respected. Is the White House in contact with the senators and support this kind of resolution?
So I don't have any conversation to provide to you at this time with any members of Congress, but as it relates to the Brazilian election, we're going to continue to monitor them. The United States trusts in the strength of Brazil's democratic institutions. Brazil has a strong track record of free and fair elections, which are conducted with transparency and high levels of voter participation. The elections that have been conducted by Brazil's capable and time-tested electoral system and democratic institutions serve as a model for nations in the hemisphere and across the world. As a partner democracy to Brazil, the United States will follow the October elections with great interest. As I just said, we're going to monitor, and with full expectations that they will be conducted in a free, fair, and credible manner, with all relevant institutions operating in accordance with their constitutional role. But again, we're just going to monitor the upcoming Brazilian elections. Don't have any calls or meetings to read out.
But is this kind of resolution something the White House supports?
I'm not going to get into any specific resolutions or any specific policy or plans. What we're going to do is we're going to continue to monitor and keep an eye on it.
And another one on the UN General Assembly. There are talks that President Zelensky could come to New York to participate. Is the White House aware of this? Is talking to Ukraine about this possible?
I would leave that to President Zelensky. We're not going to comment on his travel. That's for him to speak to. We're not going to speak to that.
And did the White House invite President Macron here around the General Assembly?
Nothing to read out to you on any upcoming meetings with any of the foreign leaders that are coming.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. Go ahead, Phil. Okay. And then I'll come back.
Just like Peter mentioned earlier on, I know that the White House is not going to comment on the specifics of the raid at Mar-a-Lago or the subsequent investigation. But I'm wondering, as the president watches this story play out in the news, just like every other American, does he think that the leaks about the investigation are helpful or harmful to the country? Does he want those leaks to continue or to stop?
I'm not going to comment on anything that's related to the investigation. It's an ongoing investigation. As you know, the Department of Justice is leading that investigation. We're just not going to comment from here.
And then one more then. Last Friday, the Energy Secretary said at Green Technology in California that state was in the lead and showing the rest of the nation how it's done. The state is currently bracing for blackouts. They've set ambitious goals, and yet in particular, their governor is asking folks there not to charge their electric vehicles. Does the president agree that California is an example for the rest of the country as it transitions?
I haven't seen those specific statements. I would like to see it in fuller context that the secretary has made, so I'm not going to comment on something that I haven't seen in full. But if you have another question, I'm happy to take it.
So, by my count, the White House, you've gotten a lot done this summer. Certainly.
Really? Have we? I think we've said that a few times.
And the president has a lot.
And you guys have reported it too, so you guys have backed us up.
Well, so all of your accomplishments. aside, the president still hasn't done a sit-down interview in over 200 days. Is he dodging us? Is there a reason why?
Oh, absolutely not. The president loves talking to you all. He takes your questions all the time. He took Peter's question last Friday. I'm sure Peter was excited about that.
I have another.
No, he took he actually, Ed, he took another question when we were traveling.
The sit-down interview is much different than when the president...
No, I hear you. I hear you. The president's going to, he is happy to talk to you all. As you know, he does it multiple times during the week. I don't have a sit-down interview to announce or provide or schedule at this time. And, look, you guys know Joe Biden. He's been a senator for 46 years. He was vice president for 8 years. And, you guys have followed him and have had multiple conversations, some of you sit-down conversations with him. And once we have something to share, we will share that. Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. On Iran this morning, the administration warned of further action after the cyber attack on Albania, and I wanted to know what kind of further action could that be, and do you expect it to be only an American action or maybe a coordinated set of sanctions with other NATO countries?
So, NATO allies will make their own sovereign decisions about how to respond to the cyber attacks, including whether to invoke. I know people have asked about Article 5, and so that will be up to the NATO allies. As you know, there's a process in this. There are multiple processes before we can get to invoking Article 5. So again, that's something that the NATO allies are going to have to discuss.
The administration support invoking
again, this is part of NATO allies to decide on. And so our role here is to support Albania's efforts to hold Iran accountable and work with Albania to strengthen its cybersecurity and reinforce norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. That is what we're going to do and be a helpful ally in that way. Thanks, Stephen, and then I'll come to you.
Thanks. The water pressure in Jackson, Mississippi has been restored, but it remains a perilous situation. So boil water advisory in effect again. The president said last week he had no plans to travel to Jackson. Does that remain the case?
So as you know, the EPA administrator is in Jackson right now. He's supposed to be doing a press gaggle. I think it may have happened already while I was here with all of you. So he was he's there today, and he has had a press gaggle, I believe, with the mayor and also the governor. I don't have a trip to read out to you. I do want to say FEMA, EPA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers continue to partner with officials there to help distribute water, expedite the delivery of equipment to repair the water treatment facility, and support with safety inspections. The emergency declaration signed by this president just last week or so includes reimbursement for drinking water and support for temporary repairs to the water system. Just a couple of things I want to list out to date that we have done. 5.6 million bottles of water have been distributed at state-run sites to date. FEMA has an additional 5 million liters of water available if requested at nearby distribution centers. A call line is available for residents who need home water delivery, and the state, the private sector, and volunteer organizations are also providing water to residents who cannot get distribution sites. And both EPA and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are on site at O.B. Curtis Treatment Plant to assess the pumping system, wastewater infrastructure, electrical system, and safety concerns. Again, our administrator of EPA, Regan, is there. The FEMA administrator, Criswell, was there recently, as well as Mitch Landrieu was there on Friday. And so we have had an all hands on deck and being as very responsive to their needs and surging that response right after the declaration was requested and signed by the president.
It's not the first time the EPA administrator has gone down to Jackson to talk about this problem. He went last year. Why has the president decided, or seemingly decided, at least to this point, not to direct the nation's attention himself to this problem? I mean, he's going over the next week, he's going to Ohio, Massachusetts, Michigan. We've traveled with him to New York, New Jersey, Kentucky, Texas, and the West. to talk about natural disasters. This is a man-made disaster. Why doesn't he use the power of the presidency to focus the nation's attention?
I would say, Stephen, that he has used the power of the presidency to focus on this particular issue. If you think about what happens to brown and black communities across the country when it comes to environmental injustices, if you look at the bipartisan infrastructure law, if you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, if you put those together, $100 billion is going to deal with that issue in communities like Jackson. And that's going to go a very long way. That is an investment that we don't see at all very often from a federal government, from a White House, to be zeroed in on those issues of environmental injustices. This is part of the plan of this president to deal with that in a real serious way. And we're going to continue. We have worked closely with groups and organizations on other things that we can do to deal with these issues. And so we're going to continue to do that. I mean, that's why the bipartisan infrastructure law is so critical, is so important. It's going to fix crumbling infrastructure that, like we're seeing in Jackson. We've talked about the $400 million through the American Rescue Plan for water upgrades across that very state. The city has allocated $20 million of its ARP funds for water and sewer infrastructure needs, $75 million through the bipartisan infrastructure law to support the state to provide clean and safer water this year, with an additional $429 million available to the state over the next 5 years. $30.9 million through the EPA's revolving loan funds for treatment and distribution system improvements for Jackson. And so we have made this a priority. The reason why the EPA administrator has been there multiple times is because he has made that a priority, in particular dealing with environmental justice issues that we see across the country. So he has used the power and the power of the pen, if you will, to deal with this issue in a real way by providing funding that's been long needed in these communities.
Thank you, Kareem. As refugees were being evacuated from Afghanistan into the U.S. last year, why weren't they all being thoroughly vetted?
So, are you talking about what are you referring to?
Well, so as the White House was managing the Afghanistan withdrawal last year, we were told no one is coming into the United States of America who has not been through a thorough screening and background check process. But now there's this DHS Inspector General who says CBP admitted or paroled evacuees who were not fully vetted into the United States. That is not good. That is different than what you guys said. So how did this happen?
No, it's not different than what we have said. That very report, it did not take into account the key steps in that rigorous, you heard from us, rigorous and multi-layered screening and vetting process the U.S. government took before at-risk Afghans were permitted to come to the U.S. Again, I would refer you to the DHS comments on this. It did not take into full account of what the other agencies are involved in making sure that this multi-layered process and screening process, it is a multi-agency effort, and it did not. This particular report did not include that.
Okay, but so in the last week or so, we've heard the president calling elected Republicans a threat to the country. Does he think MAGA Republicans are more of a threat to the country than people DHS says may pose a risk to national security and the safety of local communities?
Again, DHS has disputed this report. And it said it didn't take into account the key steps that we have taken as a U.S. government, the rigorous multi-layered screening and vetting process that we take as a government. That was not part of the report. Again, this report is not accurate. I know that our team has spoken to your team about this, and the DHS has provided a comment saying just that. So again, I refer you to DHS.
Kevin, a question on Somalia.
Thanks, Kareem. The Obamas were here today.
Yes.
Before the event in the East Room, can you give us any color about what the Bidens and the Obamas did together?
Yeah, one thing I can say, and I believe one of the presidents mentioned it while they were speaking, is they had lunch They had lunch together and they caught up and they talked about their families. And they're very close. They're good friends. Not only were they partners for 8 years, but they also became close friends as well. Their families. And so I can say that they had lunch together.
Where did they have lunch?
I don't have specifics on where they had lunch, but they spoke to it. I can't remember which one. One of the presidents spoke to them having lunch and catching up.
Okay. And just one other topic, following up on Peter's question. Can the United States assure its allies that their nuclear secrets are safe?
I know you guys have a lot of interest in this. And I know this is a question that is more broader question, but I want to be very clear, and from here we cannot comment, or we will not comment on anything related or close to the independent investigation, and I'm just not going to comment on that. I'm going to go.
Only one or two more.
Oh, okay, one or two. Let me call on folks I haven't called. Karen?
Just to go back to the $47 billion in funding that the White House had requested last week, COVID, Ukraine, monkeypox, and natural disasters. Can you give us an update on what the White House is doing right now, the conversations that are being had with lawmakers to try and push that through? Is the president having conversations with lawmakers? And is there something that, if there's a sense that something has to get dropped, what's the priority of that list right now?
So I'm not going to get into a priority of list. Look, the way we see this is our job is to tell Congress what we need to protect the American people, what we need to get things moving as we look at the different components here. And so, when it comes, for example, when it comes to COVID funding, we have been clear that without additional funding, we would have to make a different trade-offs and repurpose a previously allocated funding, and that's precisely what we've done, right? I've talked about the COVID testing. We had to end that process last Friday, and so we've been very, very clear on this. But the other piece of this too is this is not new. We did this same process this time last year, and Congress was able to get that done. So we don't see this as a difficult process. We don't see this as an uphill battle. We see this as that is very doable. And again, we're going to make the case with Congress. We're going to engage. We're going to do a meeting in person with bipartisan members of Congress from both the Senate and the House to talk about the consequences of inaction, to answer their questions, to make clear that we cannot afford to not act in light of new subvariants as we speak about COVID, and how dire things could look like or later this year if we don't act, if we don't get that extra funding. So again, we're going to continue to make the case. We're going to also actively talk to our governors and our stakeholders in this process as well. But again, we've done this before. We've been here again this time last year, and we think Congress can get this done in time.
Just be clear, the president will have those meetings with bipartisan members, or is that staff?
When I say we, it's going to be his staff. But as you know, the president, as we have said, regularly has conversations with members of Congress on an array of issues. But of course, his staff is going to be continuously being active in having those conversations. And that includes, the COVID response team. That includes our Office of Legislative Affairs. That includes senior staff, an array of staff in this building who are directly dealing with the CR. Okay, I'm going to take one last question.
Can I answer your question on Somalia?
Well, I took your question yesterday. Let me try and pick somebody. Go ahead, SB. Way in the back. I'll be back tomorrow.
Keep like that.
First, not regarding the law enforcement part, but has the president been receiving briefings on what kind of national security damage might have been happening because of a security breach in South Florida since this first came to the attention of the National Archives back in February?
So, as you know, ODNI is doing their own assessment on this. We're going to let them do that assessment and do that work. that they're doing on this particular independent investigation that is happening, that DOJ is doing. The president has not been briefed. I've been very clear about that. He has not been briefed on this. None of us have been here in the White House has been briefed. We're just not going to comment on an independent investigation that's being done by the Department of Justice. Again, ODNI is doing their own assessment, and we'll let them run that process.
But on the ODNI part, shouldn't the president be interested in, so these...
It has nothing to do with interest. It has everything to do with ODNI doing their process and us letting them go through that process.
And the second one, regarding the speech, there are Republicans who in good faith oppose abortion. Liz Cheney is one of them who the president has complimented and praised. She opposes abortion. So was it a mistake in retrospect to put that line in the speech about choice when it was clearly referring to...
He's also said that they have many differences when it comes to agenda and policies. He has said that as well. So that is, he's been very clear about that. Look, when you think about what happened with Dobbs, the Dobbs decision that was made on June 24th, it was something that was devastating to women, devastating to people's lives. It was a right that existed, a constitutional right that existed for almost 50 years. And that was taken. That was an extreme act. And what ended up happening is you saw national Republicans, say that they wanted a national ban to take away people's right, to take away a woman's decision to choose. That is something that we have to stand up against and speak out about, and be very loud and clear that, we have to fight for our freedoms and our rights. And so that's what the president's going to do. He's going to continue to protect women's rights. And it's going to lead as it was made very clear in the Dobbs decision, we're talking about contraception, right? We're talking about privacy. We're talking about marriage. This is going to open the door on so many other rights and freedoms that we all have as Americans, and the president's going to continue to speak against that. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Terry.
Anything on the CTA and the President's Cup?
Hey, nice to meet you.
Let me call you right back.
Yes.